Ladies and gentlemen, this is the continuation of the session we began in the last recording, in which I have and still have with me 6 women who are putting to me various questions they would enjoy hearing a discussion of concerning different aspects of sex, man-woman relationships, marriage, and the various problems that men and women encounter in the process of dealing with and relating to one another. So, let's begin.
What are some of the most common reasons preventing from achieving orgasm?
Well, I suspect, as do many other students of the subject, that nature may have given women a bad break. By that I mean, compared to men, women appear to, for structural reasons, experience greater difficulty simply because of the way they are built than men. Given man's sexual equipment, the way he's designed, shall we say, it's very easy for a man to have orgasm and very, very rare for a man engaged in sexual intercourse not to come to orgasm. For a woman, it appears to be harder for reasons that might in part be biological, anatomical. On the other hand, in contradiction to what I just said, there are a few cultures in which anthropologists tell us women come to orgasm very, very easily, very, very readily, and don't encounter any of the problems that we hear so much about in our culture. So the biological anatomical factor appears to be some point of contention, or it might be argued that even if there is a biologically greater difficulty for the woman than for the man, the attitudinal factors are so preponderant that if women cannot have orgasm or encounter the difficulties they do in our culture, the reasons are overwhelmingly the result of acquired and developed attitudes rather than anatomical structure. And here's how I would begin by resolving that seeming contradiction. I would say that it is probably somewhat harder on the average for a woman to have sexual orgasm than it is for the man in the case of sexual intercourse where the penis penetrates the vagina. But if we consider any kind of sexual stimulation, well, if we don't confine ourselves to the example of penile vaginal penetration, if we consider manual or oral stimulation, then I don't believe there are any significant differences in ease or difficulty of the sexes having orgasm. And if women have a harder time, the reasons are clearly the result of acquired attitudes. Now, what might those attitudes be? Beginning with the most obvious, most girls in our culture are reared to believe that a nice girl is not interested in sex. Most girls from very early in life are taught shame associated with their bodies and above all with their bodies in their sexual characteristics. The double standard is part of that. Men are expected to sow their wild oats. It's expected to be normal that a man is interested in looking at pretty girls. He's interested in having sexual relationships with attractive girls. And in fact, he's looked at as though something is wrong with him if he isn't so inclined. But the average girl in our culture is brought up to believe sex is low, terrible, and disgusting and becomes beautiful on your wedding day. So on your wedding day, you're supposed to throw a switch. After 16 or 17 or 18 or 19 or 20 years of being taught to repress sexual feelings, on a given day, magic is performed and you're now expected to reverse your entire psychology, which is not possible. Therefore, what many women have done is they have disowned their own sexuality, or disowned it to a significant extent. That is one very general factor I would name. And even among women who can have orgasm with relative ease, there is still often a problem of a woman disowning some of her sexual feelings, not quite having the same degree of self-acceptance of her sexual feelings as the average man will have. Now, what is required for orgasm is, first of all, a woman's acceptance of her own right to this pleasure and the complete natural validity of the pleasure. If that is in question or in doubt, there's a problem right there. And for the majority of women it is, and I want to say for the majority in italics, because it's a problem for many women who, hearing me right now, might deny that this problem is to any extent theirs. In other words, there are many women with complete honesty and conscientiousness could profess that they are quite emancipated from outmoded anti-sexual attitudes, and yet are infected and affected with those attitudes in ways they're not aware of. Secondly, one of the consequences of the view that man is really the sexual being to a much greater extent than women is that women are brought up to be passive sexually. Now, even if they are permitted to enjoy sex, they can still have this attitude. Sex is something the man gives me. Sex is something the man does to me. So the woman experiences herself as passive in a sexual relationship. Then if the man is, quote, good, unquote, I have an orgasm. If he isn't, quote, good, unquote, I don't have an orgasm. But it's something that the man makes happen to me, and I am basically passive. That is kind of the legacy of the first view. But unfortunately, many women who have over the first view, who accept their right to their own sexual feelings, still experience themselves too much as passive entities. They don't sufficiently take the attitude that the man takes for granted, namely, an orgasm is something I have to make happen. This was expressed marvelously one night by a woman client of mine in my couples group. She used a very interesting expression that profoundly impressed me. She said that her whole sex life changed very much for the better, very dramatically, with one shift of thought. She said, in the past, I always thought that the man's penis is in effect a tool. And we often think of the man's penis as a tool that does a job. And that's even a slang expression for the penis, a tool. She said, one day, in consequence of an argument I was having with a woman friend of mine, I went home and I began to think that the vagina is also a tool. That is my tool. And it's as much a tool as the man's penis. And she said, that revolutionized my ability to enjoy sex. That really impressed me very much. It remained with me. And I thought it's a marvelous way to express an attitude that I try to teach clients who are troubled at this area. You see, because the average woman does not think in those terms. And all the sex manuals put all the emphasis upon what the man must do. Now, far be it for me to advocate a return to the attitude of older days when the man was completely, in many cases, disinterested in whether or not the woman enjoyed sex, and it was kind of slam, bang, and thank you, ma'am kind of thing. That's not desirable either. So naturally, a man wants to be, and ideally should be, interested in giving the woman sexual pleasure, interested in her sexual feelings, interested in doing whatever he can to help her to have orgasm. But it is very harmful for the woman if she thinks, this is something I hope to hell the man gives me. Because the implications of that thought is that I am passive. The more responsibility she takes for what she feels, the more experimental she will become, the more moving around she will do, the more she will find, or is more likely to find what is right for her. Now I realize that I'm somewhat wandering away from the question, and that I'm now getting into how to correct the problem rather than really what I think causes it, but I don't think anybody will object to that. I might say that, in addition, there are certain factors that we want to remember, such as these. When a woman says, I have difficulty having orgasm, it's a good question to ask, with whom? Because often a woman has difficulty with one man and not with another. And the difference may not be in the man's, quote, technique, unquote, but in how she evaluates the man or how she perceives the man or what she thinks of the man.